Jagmeet Singh. Now, joining us now are two NDP MPs from BC. Finn Donnelly is the Member of Parliament for Port Moody Coquitlam, and Rachel Blaney is the Member of Parliament for North Island Powell River. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Stephen.
Rachel, as you heard, some residents there who don't know much or anything at all about Jagmeet Singh, is that a concern considering that there's a by-election coming up soon to win him a seat in Parliament?
Well, I'm just really excited about this happening. On Thursday, they're going to be out door knocking and talking to people. And you know what? The election hasn't been called yet. So people are just getting their heads wrapped around the fact that somebody's coming, that there's an election coming up. So I think it's a great opportunity. I think, and I know that Jagmeet's really excited to get out there and do the work. And, pretty soon everybody's going to know who he is because he's a great guy and he's going to share who he is with the community.
Finn, one of the Burnaby residents in that clip suggested that Jagmeet Singh is being parachuted in. How is the party addressing those concerns?
Well, I think he has to show up and be in the community, be present, as Rachel said, start door knocking and talking to people so they get to know him. I mean, your listeners had a range of experience of following Jagmeet on Twitter from needing to know more about him. And I think that's what Jagmeet has to do is let the people of Burnaby South know who he is, what his track record has been, and show that he is for them and wants to represent them and will do a fantastic job doing just that.
Rachel, we heard another resident there saying that she thought that Jagmeet Singh ought to get more involved with the Trans Mountain Pipeline issue. She hasn't heard his name connected to that issue. How adequately is your party getting its message across on that front?
Well, it's an important issue, and a lot of people have very serious concerns. And I think we've done a really good job of standing up on that issue. The current MP, soon-to-be former MP of the riding, did a lot of work, Kennedy Stewart. So, we're there. But the reality is people are still getting to know Jagmeet, and I think that's exciting. This is the reality. He's going to be an MP in BC. It's going to be the first time that we have a leader here, a national leader, elected since Tommy Douglas. So it's exciting news. People are going to be excited as they get to know him and as they see the campaign unfold, and that's a wonderful thing.
Finn, do you think his election is a done deal? I mean, Burnaby South is expected to be a fairly close race. The NDP's Kennedy Stewart won a very narrow victory over his Liberal opponent in 2015. Do you think it's a done deal?
No, it's never a done deal, and I don't think anyone, any politician that takes an election for granted, it can do that, especially with change happening so fast these days. Yes, it was a tight race in 2015. A lot has happened since then, including a federal court of appeal decision on the Kinder Morgan pipeline or Trans Mountain pipeline. So, I think Jagmeet has to establish himself. He has to work hard. Elizabeth May with the Green Party has said they are not running a candidate. The Liberals are still contemplating who they're running. We don't know if there's a Conservative candidate. So, Jagmeet is in a nomination this weekend on Saturday. He'll be door knocking. He'll be attending events, community events, establishing himself, and then putting pressure on the Prime Minister to call the by-election because, as Rachel said, there hasn't been a by-election called yet. So that has to happen, and then, once we know when the election is, then we need to work hard to establish himself as the clear leader and the one that will win that by-election and then move forward and get into Parliament and assume his seat.
Rachel, CBC's latest roundup of polling shows that the NDP are in third place with 16.6% of the vote, far behind the Liberals, who have 38%. The Conservatives have 33%. Why do you think the NDP is where it is in the polling numbers right now?
Well, I think this is sometimes a reality when you do have a leadership change. Jagmeet is still getting to know Canada, still sharing with people the vision of our party. And, the reality is on the ground, I'm talking to people, there's a lot of concern. I just recently spent some time with a senior who was very ill, to the point where they thought that they were going to lose her, lost her place of residence, and was moved out of the hospital into very low-income hotel. And this woman just talked about how the promises are there, but the realities and the actions are not happening. So I think right now, people are just starting to see that what Trudeau promised, he's not actually following through with. And so as that awareness grows, people are looking for some leadership. They want to see something more progressive. They want to see a Canada where people aren't left behind, where there's affordable medication, where there's real opportunities for young people that are not so sporadic. So I think, right now we're building up that knowledge, and we're going to get out there and we're going to continue to do the work. And I'm just so pleased that Jagmeet is taking leadership on these files. He's stepping up on these major issues, and he's listening to people like the senior that I talked to who's sitting in a hotel hoping to find a home. Can you imagine in your 80s being in that situation? So until we see action, it's never going to change, and we are a party that are going to follow through, and we're going to make action happen.
I'm going to ask you both to stand by just for a moment while we take a quick check on traffic. Finn Donnelly, NDP member for Port Moody Coquitlam, Rachel Blaney, NDP member representing North Island Powell River, are our guests. Amy Bell here with traffic and weather.
Yeah, we've had issues on Highway 1. We have this crash. It's just westbound west of Willingdon, and that has 2 of the 4 lanes blocked. There's also been a couple of earlier problems near Glover Road, so very heavy already this morning out of Abbotsford in through Langley. Roads are slippery, so keep that speed down, and we will see showers on and off throughout the day. Back with more before the news.
Thank you, Amy. 21 minutes after 6 o'clock on the early edition, we're speaking with Finn Donnelly, the NDP member for Port Moody Coquitlam, Rachel Blaney, the NDP member for North Island Powell River, talking about the fortunes of the new Democratic Party with a new leader. Finn, Rachel talks about the vision for the NDP, but the Liberals have adopted some of the same planks as the NDP when it comes to things like tackling climate change or Indigenous reconciliation, investing money in housing and transit. How much of a dent has Prime Minister Trudeau made into the traditional voting base of the NDP, do you think?
Well, that's what Trudeau did in 2015. He flanked left and made many promises. And I think that's what Canadians will judge in the next election, whether he's delivered on those promises. As Rachel's pointed out, seniors, for instance, are not feeling included in those promises. And if Canadians feel that he didn't deliver, they'll look to park their vote elsewhere. So if they feel satisfied, they may not change. But I think it's going to be up to Jagmeet Singh and the NDP to clearly establish why Canadians should vote for us. And looking at the Liberal track record, and there have been broken promises. Electoral reform is a complete broken promise. Climate change we're still under Stephen Harper's targets. Indigenous relations. There's many nations that are not happy with what the Liberals have promised and what they're actually doing. So that you can look at a whole range of issues that are still, the housing crisis is still getting worse. Healthcare out-of-pocket costs are still rising. The public services haven't been restored. Pensions are under threat. Rachel mentioned seniors living in poverty. There's the opioid-related deaths that are still going up. Environmental protections have not been restored. So Canadians will judge those promises and how they affect them and whether they feel satisfied with what the Liberals are doing or if they want to look to change. So that's what I think Jagmeet and the NDP have to do, is to clearly establish themselves what our vision is and what we will do for Canadians.
And Rachel, how good a job of doing that is the NDP doing right now, highlighting all of those differences that Finn just talked about?
Well, I think it's really growing, and this is the reality, is what we're saying again and again is Canadians can't wait. And what we're seeing from the Liberals right now, and what we saw with the Conservatives in the past, was this waiting game where, right now, let's talk about pharmacare. I have a lot of people from different age ranges and different family systems, and they're just saying, I can't afford medication. I've had young doctors come to my office and say, I'm trying to prescribe medication, but people can't afford it, so they're getting sicker instead of getting better. And so Canadians can't wait. They need action. So what do the Liberals do? They do another consultation. We don't need to keep consulting on whether or not people need affordable medication, especially when you have a report from Parliament saying if we had pharmacare system in Canada, we would save over $4 billion a year and provide more affordable medication. We don't need to consult. We need an implementation plan. So Canadians can't wait. Canadians are tired of waiting, and we're going to keep talking about these issues because enough is enough.
Finn, nationally, Quebec is a very important province to the NDP. We saw that in 2011 when you formed opposition, largely on the strength of the vote in Quebec. With the current level of support in the province, the party does risk being reduced to just a handful of seats. And we know that the province has made a point of opposing overt religious symbols. How do you think Jagmeet Singh wearing a turban, a religious symbol, is going to affect the party's chances in a desperately needed province? Do you think that is an issue in Quebec?
Yeah, it's an issue for sure, and I think that's going to be up to Jagmeet to establish himself in every region of Canada, including Quebec, just like Jack Layton did. I mean, that was one of the reasons that there was a breakthrough in Quebec, is because people got to know Jack, and they liked what they saw. They will have to do the same thing with Jagmeet, and Jagmeet will spend some time, obviously he'll be focused right now on Burnaby South and the by-election, and that's what he has to do. He has to win his seat, get into Parliament, and then establish himself as the leader so that people know what he's capable of and what he can do. And then he'll have to also spend time in the rest of Canada and in other regions right across the country, including Quebec. Quebec is a critically important province, and we have some fantastic MPs from Quebec, and they're going to continue doing the good work that they're doing and establishing why Canadians need and Quebecers need a strong NDP in the next election, why Jagmeet Singh is the leader to get behind. I am behind him, and I think he is a dynamic and charismatic individual. And he's young, and he's got a lot of energy, and he's got some great ideas. And I think once Canadians and Quebecers find out who he is and what he stands for, they're going to like him.
Well, thank you both very much for your time this morning. We appreciate it, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about this again soon. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
You take care. And it's Finn